Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to Professor Tomar and Anurag. So, last class we have talked about the production of nuclear grade materials, that is uranium metal and other fuel compounds like oxide, fluoride. And then we talked about the fabrication of fuel pins. So, we made 37 bundle EO2 fuel assemblies, which was fed into this fuel assemblies, which was fed into a nuclear reactor, and after completion of its designed life, fuel has come out. After generation of electricity, it has come out as spent fuel. And today, our discussion is on the reprocessing of the spent fuel. This reprocessing, main requirement for reprocessing, we have talked many a times. Once more, I will put it in this way, that as during reactions inside the reactor, all our valuable materials are not fully exhausted. So whatever material is remaining there, by reprocessing, our aim is to take back them into the fuel cycle. That is, it shows around 90% we will be able to take back, and only 2% will go for waste management. And after waste management, we have also seen earlier that after waste management also you get some value addition in the society by utilizing few elements from this material, spent fuel, and only a small portion will go as a waste storage to near surface our disposal facility or vitrified waste storage facility. So these portions maybe we will try to see in the next class. We will complete today this recycle portion. So in the first class itself, we said that first and the second class, our nuclear cycle is very much dependent on the selective separation. Here, this process also, reprocessing, is also very much dependent on the selective separation processes and specifically on the solvent extraction process. So international practices, Purex process. Purex is plutonium uranium reduction extraction process. So this process was developed in 1950, demonstrated in 1952. Large scale demonstration deployment was enforced since 1956. Currently, it is being used by most of all the countries like France, India, Japan, Russia, UK. Before this, we recovered plutonium from the spent fuel before this Purex process. That was by selective precipitation chemical process. And Purex process, presently in the Purex process, we use tributyl phosphate as the solvent. Before tributyl phosphate, it came in the limelight maybe 1949 or so. Before that, some trials were there, and even after that, initial periods, we used MIBK, methyl isobutyl ketone, as a solvent in Hexon, but that solvent was not very safe because flash point was low. So from the fire point of view, it was risky. Then once the TBP was established, we went to TBP, and till then TBP is the solvent. Now, if we see the advantages of Purex process, this is the only process used worldwide due to its continuous mode of operation. That initial process, that whatever we used, precipitation process was batch process. So this is a mode of operation is continuous, very robust, and economically viable. We get high purity separation of plutonium and uranium. Very high recovery factor of this materials, around 99.8%. High decontamination factor with respect to fission products. This has reduced the remote operation during fuel fabrication. Actually, this fuel reprocessing operation, no, that is totally remote. Because of this very high activity, you have to do everything remotely, and all the equipment are inside cell which are totally shielded. But once the product is taken out at the end of the process, that has been purified so nicely, then it really doesn't need everywhere that remote operation in the fuel fabrication procedures. Some places it is needed, but not everywhere. It has reduced the high-level waste generation, this method, and this method is having ease of integration with the waste conditioning and treatment process. We can take out the waste very selectively, and which will be treated in the waste management, which you'll see in the next step. And the major drawbacks, as I said, this proliferation resistant, it is not, because very high grade plutonium is available, high purity. So we have to have proper security arrangements so that no safety problem. Now, the second point is that minor actinides, they are, and the fission products are, they are in high level waste, but presently a lot of work is going on, and partially it is successful also to remove these materials partly from the high level waste. Now, in this simplified and the flexible flow sheet of reprocessing, first we have seen that our fuel is inside the pin. So we have to cut open that bundle. We have to make the fuel open to the reactant, that is nitric acid. Nitric acid is needed because we are going to use TBP. Now, TBP, as we have already discussed, it's having good selectivity for our material of interest is actinides, selectivity and capacity both. Along with that, it is safe, non-toxic, easy to handle. It's having very less solubility in water. It is not costly. So all these good things make TBP as a choice for all of us. So for this TBP system, we need nitrate medium. So fuel, after cutting open, it will be dissolved in the fuel material will be dissolved in the nitric acid. During dissolution, NOx gases will be generated. So these gases will contain radioactivity. So it will be monitored, and all the activities will be removed properly. And at the end of the dissolution, we'll be having hull material. Hull is that undissolved fuel pin material, which will be there in the baskets after washing, that will be taken out. So paint fuel has gone to dissolver after chopping, and then from there we get uranyl plutonium nitrate solution along with fission products and minor actinides. So this is the feed for solvent extraction. This feed has to be clarified because during cutting of your fuel pins, a lot of zirconium fines and other insolubles are there. So that will be removed by filtration. And then it will be prepared for solvent extraction. What is that preparation? Solvent extraction, during extraction, TBP can extract only some selected valency of the element. Like for plutonium, it will be 4th valency. Uranium, it will be 6th valency. So all the plutonium in the solution, which may be in the 3rd valency, 4th valency, 6th valency, has to come to 4th valency before going for solvent extraction. Otherwise, it will not be extracted. So we have to make it sure that all the plutonium is in the 4th valency. That is, there are many ways of doing it. One way is to use sodium nitrite, which will take plutonium 3rd valency and 6th valency both to the 4th valency. So conditioning is, one is that valency maintenance. Second, uranium anyway, it will be in the 6th valency when it is in the solution. So plutonium valency maintenance, and then acidity. As we said, that acidity is needed for good decontamination factor. So that acidity will be maintained. Once the feed is prepared, it will be taken for solvent extraction. This details we'll see in the next slide. After solvent extraction, we will get uranium as a separate product, which will be purified, and then as the front end, whatever way we made the oxides, it will be converted to the oxide. And other sides will get plutonium also as a pure product. Then that also will be converted to the oxide. And in between, you will get liquid waste, as we said, so that those waste will be concentrated for volume reduction and taken to the next step for waste management. Now, there is one more step here. As I said, that TBP is having a lot of good properties, but it's having a few drawbacks also. One, during our front end discussion, we said that it's having slightly higher viscosity and density. So we use it always after dilution by diluent hydrocarbons. Here also we have to do that. And additionally, in presence of radioactivity, it gets degraded. Radioactivity and some amount of acidity, it gets degraded. So degradation products should be removed by cleaning up, and then it will be recycled. So this is the general background. Now we will go for the details. Here you can see that spent fuel after sufficient amount of cooling in the reactor pool bay, once it is allowed to transport, it will be transported in this type of cask to the fuel reprocessing units. And once it comes there also it will be kept under the water pool bay for radiolytic cooling. And once the cooling is complete as per the required norms, once the radioactivity reaches to the required limit, it will be taken out and chopped. Guillotine type choppers are used to chop this fuel bundle so that inside fuel is open to the reactant nitric acid, and this fuel material will fall in the dissolver where nitric acid will be there. So it will be treated with nitric acid and we will get the feed for solvent extraction. Now this solvent extraction, as we said earlier, we have different contactors. At the back end, we are mostly using pulsed columns or annular pulsed column. Annular pulsed column is a modified version of pulsed columns. So inside the pulsed column, we have C plates, and the pulsing is being done remotely by air pulses. So here in the annular pulse column, this C plates will be outside the cylinder. We'll see the photograph. And similar manner that it will be pulsed and mass transfer will take place. PV units use mixer settlers also with proper conditioning, and somewhere centrifugal contactor. These details are for fuels from thermal reactors, not from the first. And solvent cleanup, most of the cases mixer settlers are being used. This is the annular pulse column. In our pulse column, this sweep plates are here inside this cylinder, and annular pulse column, the sweep plates will be around this annulus, hollow annulus, and this is the cylinder. So one cylinder inside another cylinder, and in this annulus portion, our sweep plates will be there. Mechanism remains same. Only thing, it's having better capacity due to its geometrical safety. Actually, we will go to the, and this is our column. this is the mass transfer zone, and these are phase separation areas. So what we said, dissolution is over now. Feed filtration is over. Feed conditioning is over. We have made all valency adjustment and acidity requirement. Now it will go for first as a block. Plutonium and uranium as a combined way will be separated from fission products and minor actinides, and then they will be separated. So this whole process is mass transfer based, and whole process will be by solvent extraction utilizing pulsed column or annular pulsed column. So in this we go, this is the first column, extraction column, where from the bottom we are putting solvent 30% TBP, and feed is not exactly at the top. Actually this column is both for extraction and scrubbing. So feed will be in between somewhere, and the feed contains your uranium, plutonium, fission products, minor actinides. So as TBP goes up and feed material comes down, they will be having contacts, and due to mass transfer, selectively uranium and plutonium will get loaded in the solvent, and fission product, minor actinides will remain in the aqueous part, which will come out as a high level waste. This is the raffinate. Raffinate is the high level waste. Now at the top, as loaded solvent goes up, it comes in contact with the scrub raffinate from the next scrub column. So here some amount of scrubbing will take place. Scrubbing removes some more impurities. Main impurity removal is during extraction, as it is selectively taking your uranium and plutonium, but some amount of trace amount of fission products also comes with that. So partially that will be removed by this first scrubbing. Then to make it better, there will be a second scrub column where scrub acid freshly will be taken from the top, and your loaded solvent will be coming from the bottom. So this will be second scrubbing. After second scrubbing, it is fission products are out with the scrub raffinate, which has gone back to the first column, and from the top we get uranium and plutonium as the loaded solvent. So this loaded solvent now will go to the partitioning column. Partitioning means separation of uranium and plutonium. Now in this partitioning column, loaded solvent is coming from the bottom, and at different locations we are inputting uranus, that is uranium 4 plus valency nitrate, uranus nitrate along with hydrogen. So this uranus nitrate and hydrogen, what they will be doing, the hydrogen is killing actually the nitrite, whatever we have added there for feed conditioning. So long they are there, plutonium will remain as 4th valency. So we wanted to now take out the plutonium, so valency has to be changed from 4 to 3. So whatever available nitrite is there, that will be killed by hydrogen, and uranus solution will reduce plutonium 4 to plutonium 3. So plutonium will come out from loaded solvent, and it will be in the aqueous. So plutonium along with the trace amount of uranium will come from the bottom as the aqueous stream, and from the top loaded solvent with uranium will come. So now this is uranium. So slight amount of other impurities may be there, which will be again cleared by one more cycle. But first it will be taken back in the aqueous form. So it will be taken in the strip column, where strip acid will be used for stripping this uranium from loaded solvent to the aqueous product, and lean solvent will come out. Lean solvent means the solvent which doesn't have the uranium in that, it is free now. So this lean solvent will be, as we said, treated, and then it will be recycled back in the after its condition maintaining like 30% and all, then it will go back for recycling. And here we have two products, that is plutonium product and uranium product. We'll go to the next slide to see. In this, these are the first thing what we have also seen. Here it is only additionally evaporation stage has shown that high level waste will evaporate it for the volume reduction, and then we'll go for vitrification and the value added material separation. And from in this stream, whatever we got, uranium solution, this uranium solution also will be evaporated, because when you go for the stripping in the feed, it will be around 200 or so, 200 to 300, but when after stripping it comes down to 50-60 GPL. So it has to be again concentrated in the evaporator, and then one more extraction cycle for purification. So their fresh solvent will be used. After scrubbing, it will be stripped, solvent will be recycled, and the product which is coming here, this is the pure uranium product which will be needed for now to convert to the oxide. So this is after your plutonium separation, once more purification cycle, then it is going for other compound formation. Similar way, plutonium also will have one more extraction and purification cycle, then product plutonium will be taken for oxide production. So uranium, for uranium, here it is uranyl nitrate, which will be treated with ammonia to get ammonium diurenate, and then ammonium diurenate will get calcined to give you uranium oxide. And here plutonium, after a full purification, it will be treated with potassium oxalate. So plutonium oxalate will be precipitated. This oxalate will be calcined to get your plutonium oxide. So we got both the products in the oxide. Now here, generally, as in the mills and all, we have seen it can be taken in the drums, 200 liters barrels. We can put with proper level and clipping or the locking. But in case of plutonium, there will be a very standard containers. As you know, when this is a fissile material, completely fissile material. So this fissile materials, either plutonium or your U-235 or U-233, whenever we handle, first we have to do a good analysis of criticality. Means whenever we wanted to make any system of these materials, we have to do a good analysis of criticality by giving the concentration of the material, fissile material, their total amount per batch, then the equipment which we are going to use, their full characteristics, equipment layout, whether there is any heterogeneous material in between which can act as the moderator, all those details, everything we have to give, and we have to do a very good analysis to see whether the way we are going to handle it will be safe. There won't be any accidental criticality due to their self-spontaneous neutron emission. So after doing that criticality analysis, we get some numbers that this vessel should be like this, and we have to keep the measured amount. They will analysis will give you that okay, this much gram only we can keep in this vessel. So throughout our operation, we have to follow all those things. Means the vessel will be very fixed vessel, where the amount also will be fixed. We cannot go beyond that. Even the layout where we will keep, that also has to be finalized at the beginning, and we have to follow throughout the process. Same layout, we cannot change. Means one vessel cannot be taken nearer to other. So because of that, this generally storage material first will be taken to the designated vessels, and then designated vessels will be kept in the barge cage. Barge cage is with some separation cages, so that by mistake also nobody can keep all the materials together. This is only to avoid this accidental criticality, which we call the nuclear criticality accident. So these are the few things which you have to follow, which is different than your front end side handling. Front end also you have to do similar way. You have to arrange it if you are handling enriched uranium. So you may be knowing that 1951 Nobel Prize was given to those two persons, Macmillan and Seeberg, for their discovery of the transuranic elements. 1940, he produced neptunium, and 1941, Seeberg, plutonium. So this was by that chemical processes from the spent fuels. Here is that Seebergium 106 element, which is presently there is not much of use because only a few atoms only have been made. He is the architect of the actinide series. Actinide series is the series where 5F in the electronic series is filled up, and he was faculty at the Berkeley. 1941, he discovered plutonium-239 and said that it could undergo fission and is a powerful nuclear energy source. And as you all know, that FATMAN, which was produced by this selective precipitation by bismuth phosphate from the spent solution. And as a plutonium, you know, plutonium metal also can be produced like your thorium and uranium by plutonium chloride by calciothermic reduction. It's also a heavy metal like uranium. And you can see the melting point for plutonium also, metal also is low. It is around 641 or so. Achha, this gives your important isotopes which are there in the spent fuel, which you have already treated. This is only to show you that these are the types of yields of different fission products will be there, and it is their half-lives. So amongst these fission products, few are very troublesome during decontamination or the separation stages, like zirconium, then ruthenium. So specific requirements are there. Either you have to make that TBP loading in such a way that it doesn't have much space for the impurity materials. Like if you plutonium is TBP is having a 30% TBP, so it's having a specific capacity to load the material. So maximum loading has to be done with uranium, around 60 to 70% with uranium, some with plutonium, some with acid. Some pre-acidity you provide in the solid, in the feed solution, so acid. So with this we have to cover so that there is less driving force to have extraction of this impurities. And another way was to maintain the cooling period in such a way that these materials are not effective during extraction. So this is a product given for the PHWR, the burn-off of around 7,000 megawatt day per ton. After a decay period of 3 years, we have, these are the fission products, where activity radioactivity is in this range. You can have an idea what sort of material is being handled inside this plant and what sort of additional precautions need to be taken. Now we are going back again to this, that this was the fuel pin which we have given inside the reactor with this type of fuel pellets, which undergone fission reactions in the reactor came as a spent fuel. So initially we had 99.3% U238 for the natural fuel, natural uranium fuel, and 0.7% 235, which is fissile. And at the end of this, our fission reactions, spent fuel, it is having 96% around fertile material, 0.4% 235 remaining, and we had new fissile fuel 0.3%. So approximately your fissile material is being balanced, and then fission products and other minor actinides. So our major aim was to take back this material in the fuel cycle by reprocessing. Now the basic features of a reprocessing plant, as you see that total technology denial regime Here everything is indigenous. And the problem is this high radioactivity. You have already seen the type of radioactivity present there. And the fissile materials, they are in the liquid form, liquid solutions form. So liquid form, due to the presence of this aqueous material, your criticality problems are much more. So you're handling every point, you have to do that calculations, and you have to take care for every transfer. Corrosive atmosphere, concentrated nitric acid is being used, and we need high recovery with high purity so that at the end people doesn't have to follow stringent conditions. So highly purified material is needed. That's a very big challenge. And containment, by following the zoning concept and proper ventilation, all the radioactivity is contained in the proper zones. And all through you have to have your remote and most of the cases maintenance free operation. So all the equipment should be so much rugged that your maintenance should not come. If the maintenance comes, you have to do this in-cell maintenances, which is expensive from the point of view of time. Then a lot of additional radioactivity you have to handle. Along with that, secondary waste also will be generated. So you have to be very careful while you are designing or fabricating the equipment. It has to be very much rugged and maintenance free. How a reprocessing plant is different from your other radiochemical plants. So for most of the radiochemical plants, you have to follow all this, but here these things will be much more stringent, like high grade radiological safety, as the radiation handling is in such high level in the aqueous form. So that safety standards are quite elaborate and very stringent. Proliferation resistance, anyway, it has to be maintained. So proper security each and every point. Exhaustive training and licensing. The persons, those will be working, they have to be trained very thoroughly. Specifically, after theoretical training, even all this engineering graduates also, they'll be undergoing very elaborate plant-based training, and thorough evaluation procedures will be followed before licensing. So exhaustive training and licensing is followed for all the nuclear plants here, and the reactors, that is much more stringent. Same thing is for accounting. Nuclear material accounting is a very important part. Actually, Professor Tomar is an expert in that. So in this case, this nuclear material accounting, it is not only for the location, not only for the accounting of the material per se, for the overall safety also, because in some vessels inside the cell, which is not at all visible from any point of time. So if it is just remaining there unnoticed and getting stockpiled there, at any point of time, it can become a source of nuclear criticality. So from that point of view, each and every batch nuclear accounting has to be very thoroughly checked. And then only we can proceed for the next batch. So these are very, very important things. All the persons working at the technical grade, engineering grade, everybody has to be trained and follow the procedures. This is just people who have not seen the sites for them. So here it is the white zone where there is no chance of contamination like offices and all. You can have your own clothing. And all the zones will be properly separated by the barriers. Green zone is the corridor of the plants, and so where generally there will be normal condition, there won't be any activity, but once it is taken for some leakage or some points, there is a chance that some carryover may be there. So you have to be prepared with your plant clothing. Amber is the working place. So here there may be a chance that some contamination may come sometime. So you have to be geared up with even your respirators. And red area where it is already known that some contamination is there, there when you have to go fully geared up with your self-breathing apparatus and all. And your ventilation will be always in this direction from low to high. So this is the way they contain all the activities in the properly designed areas and keeping the actual working areas free from activity. This gives you an idea, those who have not seen this plant. This is one of the cells. Like that, there will be so many cells. And this is our column. This area, the straight area is that mass transfer zone, and that bulge areas are for phase separation areas. So they will be fitted any tall cells, tall columns, and around that all the vessels will be there as per the design distance, design dimensions, design layout. And the most importantly, all the things have to be connected through this piping network. And before doing anything, you have to complete the full piping network to avoid any fouling, to place the valves in the locations from where remotely it can be operated, and for attaining all the checks and radioactive safety. So this is for designing. It's a very thorough job. It takes lots of checks each and every place. So you can see that just one cell, so many piping, so many loops, so many equipment. So like this, so many cells will be there. So it's a very difficult to design or even fabricate and get certified. So with that, we come to the other reprocessing technologies, because as we have seen that from the different reactor point of view, we have our material, fuel material, different types of maybe that research reactor, natural uranium metal, then oxides, enriched oxides, carbides, MOX, so many different type of fuel material, so many different reactor conditions, so many different burn-ups. Average burn-ups for a research reactor may be 150, whereas for the first reactors, it can go to more than 1 lakh or so. So this much variation in the burn-up. With that, the variation of the plutonium content in the spent fuel also maybe from 0.1% to 70%. That much variation can be there. So considering all these things, your cooling periods also will be different, and all the fuels may not be possible to do just by following all the steps of PVET. So one was in that is thorium reprocessing. If you all know that major advantages of using thorium with the fuel material is generation of 233, which is the fissile isotope of our choice. From the neutronics point of view, it is very nice as they are captured to fissile cross sections ratio is low, and capture is very low. So for this 233, thorium is radiated, and thorium can have high burn-ups, minor actinide formation in thorium is less. So major aim is to, after irradiation, to have U-233. So there are various methods, but the one which is simplest one was to use 1.5% tributyl phosphate extraction, because CBP will preferentially extract uranium. It will not extract thorium or protactinium that quantity. Maybe minor contamination may be there. So it will be purified by passing through silica gel from protactinium, and then it can be concentrated. around 10 to the power 7 type of decontamination has been obtained by this. And this is one of the ways where 233 was recovered. Other processes by using diisobutyl carbitol for protactinium, then 5% TBP for U233, 45% TBP for thorium. Thorium needs a higher concentration of TBP, but they are not so very easy processes. This process was better. This co-extraction of uranium and thorium by using around 45 to 55% TBP, followed by a very selective dilute acid stripping of uranium 233. So these are the nutshell in extraction of 230 uranium 233. Now for fast reactors, the major problems which we generally see that higher plutonium content in the spent fuel. This is much higher compared to our thermals. When LWR light water reactors may go to 1%, this can go beyond more than 20 to 30%. So in this high plutonium content condition, there is a third phase formation during extraction with TBP. Then higher radioactivity and higher quantum of fission products lead to higher solvent degradation and handling issues. Due to the presence of higher concentration of fissile material in the solution, like if high quantum of plutonium is present there, the nuclear criticality concern is much more. So there, every equipment, like we have to make in such a way that total inventory is very much controlled and arranged in such a way that there is no interruption. And other class, somebody was asking about this plutonium uranium carbide. This fuel is pyrophoric. So while you have to do the decladding, it needs a total inert atmospheric operation. After that, it is going to the solution, so then pyrophoricity problem is reduced. But dry handling, it needs inert atmosphere. Additionally, this sodium being used as coolant, so sodium removal from all sub-assemblies, that will be a very big issue. So all these additional problems are there with the first reactor fuel reprocessing. Still, Abetyr is doing reprocessing by utilizing TBP. They use the pilot plant facility Coral with specially designed choppers because their material is with stainless steel clad. Then centrifuges for filtration or separation of the insolubles. And as we talked during our second class, centrifugal extractors, which will be having very small hold up at any point of time, along with that small residence time. So it will reduce your reactivity problem, radioactivity problem, criticality problem, and degradation problem also. So with that, it's going on, and there are developmental activities for getting much improved solvents. Few good things have been obtained, already tested with nitrogen donors amides, but still third phase is totally not, problem is not solved. So still it needs some more additional activities, but till that time TBP is usable and it is being used. So this non-aqueous processes work started long back, that pyrochemical processes where liquid metal and molten salts are much more resistant to the damage, radiological damage. It was thought to be a better option with lower criticality issues because aqueous part is removed. However, this R&D experiences on the metallic fuel shown that oxide fuel needs reduction before use to take it in the metallic form. And separation factors are lower compared to the aqueous processes. And considering this high temperature aggressive corrosive conditions, you need proper material constructions and a very reliable system. Like in a Purex system, we are working months after months without any maintenance continuously. We take very long campaigns before taking any shutdown to do any maintenance. So that type of reliable systems with proper sensing elements and some instrumentation and control arrangements, it is yet to be developed such systems which can really replace totally our existing system. So with that, I end today's lecture. Hand over to Professor Kumar. He wanted to say something. Thank you.